Hello and welcome to Global Eye. I'm Parikshit Luthra. The top story we are tracking this week. Pakistan's Election Commission has announced the provisional results following a delay in counting even 10 hours after polls closed. As per early trends, the grouping of independent candidates affiliated to Imran Khan's PTI has taken the lead in the National Assembly. Imran Khan is at present in jail over an alleged corruption case. The crackdown on his party began in April 22 after he was removed from power. PML Nawaz, which is the single largest party so far, emerges as a close second, followed by Bilawal Bhutto's Pakistan People's Party. Despite lagging behind, Nawaz Sharif is upbeat about making a victory speech once the final results are out. Sharif's party has secured victory in the National Assembly seats from Punjab's Lahore. The country's political landscape is largely dominated by three major parties: the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and Pakistan People's Party. The incoming government will have to grapple with formidable challenges that include handling of internal conflicts, a significant economic crisis, and illegal migration. Joining me now to take this discussion forward is Tilak Deveshar, author and member of the National Security Advisory Board, and Sharad Sabharwal, former Indian ambassador to Pakistan. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Deveshar, let me begin by asking you to highlight the atmosphere in which this election in Pakistan is actually taking place. You've seen a series of explosions in Balochistan ahead of the polling. 28 people were killed. Phone services, internet has been suspended. What are the forces at play right now?
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show. You see, in the run-up to the elections, this is probably one of the most lackluster atmosphere in terms of atmosphere elections in Pakistan. Pakistani elections are very colorful, full of song and dance and jalsas, jaluses and all kinds of things. This time the campaigning was very lackluster. That's the first thing that strikes you about these elections. Second, yes, there has been violence, but violence in KPK and Balochistan, which has, in any case, these two provinces have been rocked by violence during the last year or year and a half. In fact, 90% of all the violent incidents have taken place in these two provinces. So violence is something which is, endemic to these two provinces. But yes, in the run-up to the elections too, these incidents which you talked about, and there was an incident, I think even yesterday there was an incident at the time of voting. There has also been violent incident today when some protesters had protested against in one particular constituency in Shangla. The police opened fire and between 2 to 4 people have died. So this election is marred. And you're right, the mobile and internet services were put off 1 minute before the election process began, citing security concerns. And they remained off for a long time, which again mars the transparency and independence of the elections. So all these things put together, lackluster election, violence, putting off the internet and mobile services, all leads to the conclusion that the elections were not very transparent, neither free nor fair, which in any case, Pakistan is difficult to accept, that elections will be free and fair. But all these things add up to that.
Right. Important points there. Let me go across to Ambassador Sabharwal. Ambassador Sabharwal, we are looking at early leads for independent candidates affiliated to Imran Khan. What do these leads really mean? Because the popular party or the popular candidate in this election was Nawaz Sharif. The fact that the independents who are backed by Imran Khan, who are close to the PTI, are doing well, has come as a surprise to many election observers.
Well, it came as a surprise only because too many people had convinced themselves that this election was fixed to the extent of, everything had been tied up to bring PMLN to power, and that Nawaz Sharif would become Prime Minister the 4th time. That is not happening. That doesn't seem to be happening unless, something happens now, which enables those kind of outcomes. So therefore, it came as a surprise. But if you look at it on another plane, it is not a surprise because Imran Khan's popularity hadn't gone down. He had gained significantly in popularity after he was ousted from power. There was no indication that popularity had gone down. In fact, 1 or 2 polls that came out last month showed his popularity rating as about 60% or so. The only question was whether his supporters would, get discouraged and stay back home on the election day, polling day, or would they come out in large numbers? It seems that they came out in large numbers to vote for him. It is also some kind of endorsement of the anti-army stance that he had taken. So taking all those things together, you have these large number of independents. In fact, last night, when TV channels started showing the results, initial results, in too many constituencies, the independents were leading. Then, of course, there was a delay in releasing the results, a long delay. And now they are being released, and the picture seems to be changing a little bit in favor of PMLN and PPP together constituting more than half. And the number of independents staying below the halfway mark so far, for the results that I have seen on popular TV channels in Pakistan. So that is the situation.
Right. Mr. Deveshar, coming back to you, considering a scenario where the candidates who belong to the PTI but fighting independently are able to secure a majority in this election, how challenging would it be for them to form a government in the current volatile political and security environment in Pakistan?
I think it will be very difficult. You see, as independents, they're not bound by party discipline. So they can be persuaded to join either the PMLN or the PPP as the establishment wants them to cobble up a government. So for them to maintain their independence and to sort of continue and then to come together to form a government, I think it's going to be very, very difficult and challenging for them. A much more likely scenario will be that some or many of them, as required, will join either the PPP or the PMLN, and they will cobble together a government together with the MQM and with the other parties. By themselves, because right now the independents don't have a majority on their own in any case. They will also need the support of either the PPP or the PMLN. And, to bargain for their support, they will say, you join us instead. So, basically things are up for grabs. It's not very clear. I think the situation will become clearer, maybe by tomorrow. But two other points that I would like to make. Because the PTI is no longer contesting under a symbol and not contesting as a party, they will not be eligible to get a share of the women's vote, seats, which are 16 number. Those will get shared between the PMLN and the PPP, further boosting their tally. Second, this vote which has come to Imran Khan, I don't think so. It is based on his performance as Prime Minister for 3.5 years. It is really a sympathy vote, for his being incarcerated, and especially in the last 1 week. He was given 3 successive sentences for 10 years, 14 years, and 7 years in 3 different cases. I think that has tipped the scales, and people have come out in large numbers to vote for him. The underdog is always favored. That's why people have come out in large numbers. So I think the situation should clarify in a day or two which way the wind is going to blow.
Right. So you're saying that he is getting the sympathy vote, and it's not necessarily because of his work as Prime Minister of Pakistan. Ambassador Sabharwal, if I can get you in, when it comes to the role of army or the interference of the army in this election, do you think they're as involved as ever before?
More than ever before. I think the army has intervened in almost all elections, sometimes a little less, sometimes more. But this time the army has been very active. We are talking of, this delay and post-poll rigging that is happening now in changing the numbers a little bit. In relation to your previous question, I think one of the things that they are trying to ensure is that these independents do not cross the halfway mark. Regardless of the legal difficulties they have in coming together and forming a government, etc. I agree with Tilak that they'll be made to join, many of them, one of the 2 parties, either PPP or PMLN. But I think it's quite clear that much before this, the army had changed and tilted the electoral field totally against Imran Khan and his party. His incarceration, his conviction in 4 cases, three in the last few days. Then the withdrawal of the symbol of his party, harassment of the people trying to file their nominations by the law enforcement agencies, by the returning officers, and so on. And right to the end, harassment of PTI candidates, those independents backed by the PTI. So the electoral field had been tilted completely against the party. But in spite of that, since their independents were getting significant numbers, I think they have had to resort to, and there are allegations with some justification, of post-poll rigging now to change the numbers in the course of the counting of votes.
Right. Mr. Deveshwar, coming back to you, what do we see in Pakistan right now? And earlier today, there was a report by the Moody's agency, the ratings agency, which said that Pakistan is facing a very challenging macroeconomic environment. There's a fragile balance of payments, weak growth, high inflation, and whichever government comes to power, it will have to negotiate another program with the IMF because the current one gets concluded on April 2024. And even for the current program, they will have to show ways to increase revenue, take some unpopular decision on taxation as well. In an environment like this, how easy is it for terrorist elements in Pakistan or anti-India elements in Pakistan to take control?
Leaving aside for the moment the issue of terrorism, as you mentioned, very strong measures will have to be taken by whichever government comes into power. But if the credibility of the elections is questioned and the government does not have legitimacy, it will find it very difficult to implement the tough measures that are required by the IMF and even required for Pakistan's own economic development. So this is going to be the biggest challenge for the government, whichever government it is, the lack of credibility of the elections and lack of legitimacy of the government. I don't know how they're going to get around it, but that is going to be a huge challenge. Second, as far as the terrorists are concerned, I don't think so. The army today is in the mood. They've got so much on their plate right now, politically, economically, the challenge of the TTP and the Baloch groups, that they would not like to open another front by try to send terrorists across to India. I think that possibility can be discounted, but that does not mean that we let down our guard because, Pakistan is so unpredictable. Any madcap could try anything. So we need to keep our guard up. But I personally would discount the possibility at this stage of any major terrorist attack by Pakistan and India.
All right, we're heading into a short break, but we will request both Tilak Deveshwar and Ambassador Sabharwal to continue being with us. We'll be right back and we will be discussing the road ahead for the key contenders in Pakistani politics and what the different political scenarios there after elections could mean for India and Pakistan together. Welcome back. You are watching Global Eye. We are discussing the political outcomes in Pakistan, the elections that have taken place and what it means for India-Pakistan relations. We're joined by Tilak Deveshar, author and member of the National Security Advisory Board, somebody who is an authority on Pakistan and India ties. Also, Sharat Sabharwal, former Indian ambassador to Pakistan. Gentlemen, thank you once again for being with us. Ambassador Sabharwal, if I were to ask you about Imran Khan specifically, what does this election mean for him? Currently, the charges that he faces could make him face at least 10 years in jail.
Well, for the moment, he is in trouble. In spite of the vote in favor of his party's independent candidates or independents backed by his party. But for the moment, he remains in trouble. He'll remain incarcerated because the army will fix the result from here on to make sure that people sympathetic to him or loyal to him do not have a chance to come to power. But to write him off for all the times, would also not be correct. After all, Nawaz Sharif, if you recall, during the 2018 election, about the same had happened to him. He was incarcerated, he was convicted in 2 cases, disqualified from holding public office. Eventually, he went into exile. But then things changed and the army brought him back. To the extent that he was being presented as a favorite of the army candidate they would like to see as prime minister. So things could turn around for him, but in the short run, I don't see things improving.
In the short run, you don't see things improving for him. Mr. Deveshar, when it comes to Nawaz Sharif, when it comes to Bilawal Bhutto, Imran Khan, who do you think would probably seek best relations with India? Now, this has been an issue over decades. We don't really have any bilateral relationship with Pakistan because of the slew of terror attacks that have taken place over the years and complete lack of action by Pakistan government against terrorists on their soil. Do you think any of these leaders would like to restore relations with India?
I don't think so that any of the political leadership in Pakistan has had an independent foreign policy. The army is always looking over their shoulder and the army dictates what exactly is the status and level of the relationship with India. Nawaz Sharif has this to his favor that as a businessman, he is keen to establish trade. He has in the past also, and he will try and do so now. But unless and until, you see, initially when he came back from London, he sounded very conciliatory about relationship with neighbors, especially India. But when you look at the PMLN manifesto, it's the same old chant, that unless India walks back on the changes on 5th August 2019, we cannot go ahead and end the relationship. So again, it shows the kind of pressures he is under. Now, where Bilawal is concerned, I think he's pretty immature and young. He has some time to go before he matures into a kind of a leader or a statesman. Imran Khan has been very vicious in his criticism of this government and the Prime Minister specifically. And especially after August 2019, he seems to have lost it as far as India is concerned. So I am not very hopeful that either of the three, the relationship with India would advance ahead, except if Nawaz Sharif is given a free hand, then at least in terms of trade and in diplomatic exchanges and restoring the high commissioners, things like that could move. Small steps could be taken to try and put back the relationship into some sort of a normality.
Right. Now, looking at the larger geopolitical environment under which this election is taking place in India's neighborhood, Ambassador Sabharwal, we see the Russia-China axis getting stronger. This is something that the West is very worried about. We're looking at a lot of tensions in the Middle East, complete uncertainty. In an environment like this, what are some of the international factors, international interference at play in this Pakistan elections? What should India watch out for?
Well, I wouldn't say any significant international interference is there in this election. Most of the things that have happened as a result of Pakistan's internal dynamics. You've seen the Americans, they have been talking of free and fair elections. That kind of noise they have made repeatedly. But we also know that the Biden administration is not very well disposed towards Imran Khan. He, after his ouster, he had spoken of a conspiracy by the Americans along with Bajwa, former army chief, to oust him from power. He tried to cozy up to Russia. Was with China, any Pakistani leader would try and maintain a close relationship with China. So they are not very well disposed towards him, and I don't think beyond making those noises, they would go strongly against any attempts to keep Imran Khan or people sympathetic to him out of power. That would largely be the approach of the other Western countries who would follow the American lead. Aside from making noises, you will have from here and there human rights organizations, democracy organizations, etc. But beyond that, nothing. What is important is that for Pakistan itself, what does it mean? It's become increasingly irrelevant, at least constructively, to the region. Nothing constructive to contribute to the region. A fraught relationship with India, relationship with the Afghan Taliban close to a very dangerous turn, had a clash with the Iranians, subdued for the time being, but things could blow up again. So in that sense, Pakistan needs to have a strong government, build political consensus to deal with all these problems, its internal problems and external issues. And this election, giving it to them.
Right. My final question to Mr. Deveshwar. Mr. Deveshwar, a lot has been said about China's indirect role in the crisis in the Middle East. What's happening in the Red Sea in terms of Houthi attacks on merchant vessels linked to Israel as well. An unstable Pakistan. Do you feel that China would like to leverage this situation to its advantage? Is there something in terms of security, the situation in Pakistan, that India needs to watch out for?
I think China would be as concerned about instability in Pakistan as anyone else. After all, they're the ones who've put about $22 billion investments in this China-Pakistan economic corridor. And as it is, they know that the investment is not very good because they're not getting anything in return. Pakistan's inability to pay. Still, they would not like to say instability because of their soft underbelly, which is Xinjiang, the problem they have with the Uyghurs. They would like stability in Pakistan. And sort of, as far as we are concerned, as I had mentioned earlier, I don't think so at this stage. With so many fronts open up for the Pakistan army, that they would try and do something. Of course, you can't forget that in the past, Pakistan has always sought to divert attention from domestic troubles by trying to meddle around with India. But I think today the situation is different. They've got too many fronts. The economic situation is really bad. So I don't see them doing that.
Right. It was a pleasure talking to both Mr. Tilak Deveshwar and Ambassador Sabharwal about the election in Pakistan. Interesting times, an interesting political battle to watch out there. But of course, instability in India's neighborhood is never good. We'll wait for the outcome and see what the larger picture is. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us on the program. With that, we come to the end of Global Eye. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.